Welcome to Fantom Comics on a absolutely lovely fall Saturday.
That's true.
We're here talking to yet another transplant into Washington, much like me. Chad came, went to school. So, Chad, can you pronounce your last name correctly for the audience so I don't have to mangle it?
Yeah, it's Bilyeu, like I'll bill you later.
Which is a perfect segue into talking about Chad's new book. So, Chad, you came to DC to go to school, right?
Yeah, initially Howard, and then this was like it was supposed to be 1 year as an exchange thing, and I was supposed to go back to Cleveland, but I'm not doing that. So I was like kind of homeless for 4 months, and then I found a job at George Mason, homeless living out of a van.
Oh,
So like homeless, fabulous, and then worked and attended at Mason for like 3 years. Then I landed a job at Georgetown. So I was at Georgetown roughly 7 years.
Okay, let's talk briefly about why Howard didn't work for you.
Well, it did work. It was just I was part of the National Student Exchange Program, so I was really only supposed to be there for 1 year. And I don't know if people know, but the tuition at Howard is not cheap.
Right.
So when I got a job at George Mason, that's when I discovered that if you work at most American universities, free tuition is one of your benefits.
Okay.
So tuition was free at Mason and it was free at Georgetown.
Nice. So for those in the audience who might not know, Chad eventually decamped for Amsterdam. But I believe you earned your degree first, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I got a degree from Georgetown, liberal studies with a concentration in American studies. So like history and I don't know, urban planning, sociology, cultural stuff, things of that nature.
Right. So we're kind of moving at his career sideways just to explain the Chad in Amsterdam book. So while he was in the States, Chad was not a comics writer. It was when he left to go to Amsterdam that he took up something close to autobiographical comics. So if you could tell us a little bit about your career and how this Chad in Amsterdam came out as individual comics and then was collected.
Okay, so I guess it was like 2017 or so. And it was a tough time financially for me. I was like unemployed, so I'm chilling. And usually I was always doing things. So in Amsterdam, I was like throwing parties for a bit, and that kind of turned into releasing music on cassette. But neither of those are like viable career options, I think. So as that was waning out, I went ahead and I was reading a lot. So you're broke. You can't do nothing. So I was downloading a lot of comics for free. Pardon me for saying that in the comic store, but I was poor. So I was reading American Splendor, and of course being a Clevelander, and then like we always knew who Harvey Pekar was, but I actually never read his comics. So I actually read everything, and I was like, okay, I like this a lot, and I think I can kind of, take the template, but do it for me in Amsterdam, and I thought that might be of interest to do. So March 2018, I put out the first issue. Roughly did like 2 a year up till 2021, and then like a few years ago, I approached this Dutch publisher, Scratchbooks, and they amalgamated it all into this hardcover here, the refined, definitive version with like no typos or anything like that.
So like Harvey, you hired artists to work on your scripts. How did you actually, one, find the artists, and two, find the money to pay them? Because it can't be easy, even in a comics town such as Amsterdam is, to break into the comics field as a self-publisher.
Yeah, that's really true. So when I first, I got a grant eventually from the Amsterdam Funds for the Arts. But the way I applied first, and that was rejected. So what I did is I wrote the first comic that actually appears in there, the Dutch Inquisition Part 1. And I actually hit this guy, Jared Bogus, up. I had the script, and I was like, would you do this? And he's like, yeah. So I didn't really have much money, really. And he drew it for me. So with him drawing it, then I went back to them and showed them, okay, this is what I'm going for. And then they gave me enough money to make one issue. And I kind of had enough money in savings to make my own. So I was like, okay, I can at least make 2 issues. So proceeded to do it. Mm-hmm. And the first one actually, it went over quite well in Amsterdam. It was like nothing really like it. As far as, well, it's a tourist town, so tourists were into it. But then also, like, because of my particular situation, expats were kind of into it, and I knew a good amount of people. And then the Dutch folks found when it wasn't like such a cursory thing rooted in tropes, they dug it too. Mm-hmm. So I made the first one, second one, and the way I found the artist, a lot I knew at first. The guy Jared Bogus, I really just cold called him because I saw his stuff on Instagram. That's where I find a lot of artists if I don't know them directly. So he was like, yeah, cool. And I mean, if you pay, of course, people are always more receptive, you know, so that's a good thing. And it just, after that, it just started to kind of grow. And I know a lot of artists just from being in music or whatever other artistic endeavors. And then I started doing festivals, and you meet more people who are in it. And then they're like, oh yeah, I'd be willing to draw one. And I'm like, well, I pay. They're like, oh yeah, sure, boom. So after that, it kind of, actually, it's never been that hard to get people to draw stuff. So I've been really fortunate in that respect.
So you talked about Harvey in Cleveland, and he had a stable of people he worked with, which, you know, starting with Robert Crumb, you're pretty much at some point, you know, people moved beyond you, and young people were coming up and filling out his stable, including the late Ed Pisker. Are you finding that to be the case? Are some of your collaborators still with you, or have they moved on as you've moved into your new series?
I mean, that's a good one too, because a lot of them I haven't spoken to in a while. So a lot of them I really know. So we are actually in contact, and there's definitely quite a few I would definitely work with again. Mm-hmm. People like my man Eric Y or Gary Dumb, who also worked with Harvey. I think like there's one lady named X Graphics. So I know her. She lives in Amsterdam. I could definitely work with her. I think most of the people in Amsterdam for sure. I don't know. I feel like most of them, none are that big, but they all seem to like be doing different and better stuff. A lot more in the field of illustration, not necessarily comics. So yeah, I think I could probably hit them back. You know, unlike the fellow who did the cover there, Danny Modesto Rodriguez, for sure. I think so. So it's nice. I mean, again, I think when you're trying to self-publish and you're writing and you're working with artists, the key is just paying people and doing that well so you have a good reputation. And I mean, it's a tricky bit because you kind of take the risk, you know, but it's just how it goes.
The art styles are very varied in the book, and that makes it look more like an anthology book. And the stories are shortish, right? I mean,
the longest is probably 12 pages.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And so I enjoyed this quite a bit as individual issues, but also to see what a expat in Amsterdam would find. And I think you were popular with the comic book stores too, right? Well, so Amsterdam has a fairly strong comics tradition. Maybe you could just talk about that briefly for those of us who don't know much about it.
Sure. So, like, Amsterdam has a pretty healthy comic scene. I'd say the epicenter of it is a store called Lambiek, kind of reminiscent of something like Fantom, just way more Dutch comics, of course. And then downstairs, they house all the, like, indie American, North American, British stuff. So a little bit of manga, but so they actually do something on Friday where we kind of just go there and drink beers and talk about everything but comics, and that's real nice. So when I was starting off, I just went to Lambic and I show them like, hey, I got a comic, it's at the printer. And I'd say they were a little trepidatious at first, but then they saw the comic and they're like, oh, this actually looks pretty good. We'll do a release party. And I was like, oh, cool. All right, that's what's up. So I invited everybody I know, and they were kind of shocked, like, how does this dude know so many people? But I had done other things, like DJing and parties, and just knowing people. So a lot of folks came, particularly for that first issue. I mean, it's just like doing a series. Like the first issue, everybody's buying it. Second one, a few less. Third one, such is life. But so there, and then like stores like I went over to Hink, with our mutual friend Alfred, and they liked it as well. And again, it's just this thing. Chad in Amsterdam was this interesting book that kind of didn't fit, and there was like nothing else like it. There's no other Amsterdam comic. So from that, people would waltz there and they're like, "You have any comics on Amsterdam in English?" Yeah, this guy's. So it fulfilled a good niche, and then because like it wasn't like so dependent only upon comic book readers, I was able to get it to, like in museums or like tourist shops, a lot more weird bookstores as well, and then the Dutch folks liked it as well. So it kind of just it was just this independent hustle, like Too Short, out the trunk sort of thing, and me cold caught doing my Willie Loman. I sell comics, and it just kind of worked. So it was really a hustle. And again, like I mentioned Too Short, but like really, he's like an inspiration for doing indie marketing, because you just go in fearlessly, as I did in here at one point, and just and it goes, and then you check in and see, hey, has stuff sold? You wanna re-up on your stock, and that's how I did it. So I focused really in that city at first, and that kind of work, because it was not like I'm big or nothing, but it's kind of known, so people know that I do it, and it seems it's in the right place for visitors to get it and take it home and whatnot.
So the re-up is essentially a prequel about your life here in Washington, and partly I assume it's driving towards how you're going to end up in Amsterdam, how and why you're going to end up in Amsterdam. Excuse me. So let's see, volume 1 over here, you got it? Okay. Volume 1, the re-up meant nothing at all to me except for a military term.
Right.
It's a term for re-enlistment. But apparently it's also a term for marijuana supply. Would that be accurate?
Any drug, probably.
Any drug, probably?
Yeah,
okay.
But from a seller standpoint, like, I guess, I don't know, like, from a seller standpoint, it was always this idea that, I have drugs, I'm running low on drugs, so I need to re-up and get more so I can keep making money. I guess people who consume them would say the same thing, but it was definitely, like you said, a military term that was appropriated by these criminals who thought it made sense to re-enlist in this lifestyle, yet again for one more package.
So, at the beginning of the book, you are an AV tech working in the evenings and possibly somewhat underemployed. And taking a few classes, not a stunning amount of them, right? So you're not doing either one thing full time, which seemed to leave time for smoking marijuana.
Yeah, that's true. I was working full time, but I wasn't working full time, because like the nature of AV at a university is like you have like you might work 15 minutes per hour,
right?
Because it's all about the class break. So you have a class break, things switch. I already knew the problematic professors, so I'd go in there, get stuff ready for them, you know, and then everything would be cool. If I got no hits on my walkie-talkie, I just kind of chill and would break out whatever paperback was in my pocket and chill, read. If it was later in the evening, maybe go get some food and a dirty martini or something, all on the dime of Georgetown University. So, yeah.
So Georgetown is a fairly elite university, I think we can say. I'm going to assume that when you're writing about the 1990s, right?
2003 to 2008, roughly. All kind of smushed into like an ambiguous time period, but those are the actual years.
All right. I'm still going to guess it's mostly a wealthy white university, no matter how much they're trying to change things. I went to George Washington here in town, and that was true for that too, and I was a scholarship student, so I can sort of relate to not relating to everybody around you. So let's talk a little bit about that. In one of your first issues, you seem to actually be getting along better with the other staff of the university than you actually do with the professors or the students.
Yeah, like, I felt at Georgetown, like, George Mason, I knew a lot more people, and you get to Georgetown, it's quite clannish, or classist as well.
Yeah, classist. Yeah.
So, and then I wasn't really like, when you're around this university and, you know, people are like, hey, you're not in my dorm, you're not in my classes, because I was taking classes at night. So, you know, I kind of just didn't exist. People knew me as the AV guy,
right.
And then I took classes at night. But I didn't know most of these people intimately. So, yeah, I was just kind of chilling. And fortunately, from Howard, from Mason, I already knew people. So, like, me going to Georgetown was a very new experience for me as well.
Right.
Georgetown, like, when we were at Howard, we'd go over there to go to Haagen-Dazs, you know,
Right. Yeah.
take girls on dates or something,
Right.
and just chill, because it's a good looking part of town for sure.
Yeah.
But we didn't really do anything in Georgetown, so I didn't know it till I worked there.
Right.
So then, yes, slowly I meet people, and I met like one student who happened to be the weed guy.
Right. So let's just keep rolling. So you meet the weed guy, and then you meet the weed guy's successor, and then eventually they ask you to be the weed guy.
Yeah.
And you resist a bit.
Yeah, because, I mean, the thing was, like, this guy who's, all right, I meet a fellow, he's like he was the weed dude there. And, I mean, in here, like, we black out a lot of eyes to protect the innocent, I mean, the guilty and whatnot. And so, the fellow I met just, I don't know, we'd be in his house, and we're chilling, we're smoking, because he kind of invited me over to smoke with him. So I'm smoking, I'm technically his boss, but who cares? And then, you know, people would come knock on his door, come in, they go into the kitchen, they're back there 2-3 minutes, and then they'd leave. And I'm like, this guy sells something. So he thought I didn't know, and I'm like, well, let me buy some weed too, man. So we got cool, and it was a drought. So I knew a dude from my past life who usually always had weed, to a degree that, like, I'd see this person, and I mean, this is not like today. Like, I know people are just used to going wherever, and it's kind of like Amsterdam now, but back then, it's like, if you didn't know anybody, you didn't get weed. So my dude, he had, that I knew, not from Georgetown, he had a lot of really good weed all the time. So I'm like, can you get me something? Here's like enough for an ounce. Sure. So I thought I was like getting weed through him. But eventually, when I contacted him, when we had this drought in Georgetown, I found out he was actually the guy.
Right.
And it was funny because we had been friends for like 4 years, and he never really mentioned it. You know, like, he would just give me, here, like, how much is it? Yeah, give me the money, I'll bring it to you Monday. So it was like, we were friends first, which was nice. But that was my connect, my plug, as the kids say now. Well, I don't know what the kids say now, but the last thing I heard was plug. So, I mean, and then, yeah, they got cool, because now my boy from Georgetown's buying from my old friend, who was the supplier. And then, yeah, they wanted me to do it, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I it went on to another fellow who we know, a guy who I actually still know. He lives in Berlin now. So he did it for a minute. It was funny. He was like a dude from Rhode Island. And he kind of like looked like a LL Bean, J.C. Penney dude at first. And then like a few months later, after he'd been selling weed, he started looking like a white rapper. Like he started looking like House of Pain or something, you know. Came in with the fitted and the flat brim. I said, okay, you're making money now. So when he left, I finally was like, all right, I'll do it.
So at this time, you're not living on the university, you're living up in Adams Morgan.
That's right.
You don't really have the long-term strong ties to DC that you might have expected somebody to step into this role from. You've been here for what, 4 years at that point, roughly?
Yeah, roughly 4 years, that's correct.
Bouncing around to, this would be your third school, so you're kind of an incomer, but you turned out to be the incomer that, I can't believe I'm saying this, but that Georgetown University needed for their weed sales. So, with your AV, you pretty much could go anywhere in the university, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're a person of color, so you stand out a little bit, and there's one episode in a car which was kind of entertaining where you were parked with one of your clients, if I may call them that, and a police officer. I wasn't sure if it was a DC police officer or a Georgetown police officer came up, and tell us a little bit about that situation.
Right, so that, I think that's in number 5.
Yeah, I'm jumping around a little bit. Yeah.
That's okay. And it was just one of the, I know this lady, and she's still a friend as well. And it was a white lady from Virginia, and really cute, really like giddy, hey, type of person. And so like, but she sold like mad weed. So like she'd be getting like, I don't know, quarter pound, half pound, pound a week.
Wow.
So she was great. But the thing with her, she was always late. Like person of color late. CPT, you know what I mean? So like,
and this is a theme through several issues.
this is the thing, because she was really always late, and it affected me a few times. But like, she's late, and we're like in a car. So the police, it was actually DC police, and I didn't say it, yeah, but we drew the car like that. So DC police pull up behind us because she's just like illegally parked. So you know, whoop whoop, and when I'm like I mean, because I got like a half pound on me, she's got money there, and she's like, quick, kiss me. So we just start kissing, making out. And I kind of got lost in the moment. Homegirl's cute, you know what I mean? So like, and then you get the, what? Oh, God, what's going on? Oh, sorry, I just, and she, you know, she played it like just totally like white privileged her way out of it. It was a beautiful thing to see. Like, and she had it. Oh, have you been drinking? No, I don't drink. Where are you guys going? Dave and Buster's. Why are you parked here? We were in heat. And I thought it was safer than driving and being in heat. And he just let us go. And I'm like, major aplomb. So like, she was actually, and that, you know, it's one thing you learn doing this. Like, you can't really underestimate people. People are savvy, and they have their ways to navigate and negotiate. And they kind of know, people know their attributes. It's interesting. Like, she knows, like, I'm a cute chick. I can get us out of this. Just kiss me. And then she complimented me on my tongue acrobatics, so I was really happy.
Yeah, I'll just leave that between the two of you. It was a very amusing vignette, and the books are full of vignettes like that where Chad has closely observed some part of his life. And I believe in one of the letter columns you talked about actually carrying around notepads to make notes on things. And perhaps we'll see one revealed right now. There we go. Okay. So why don't you talk a little bit about your process, about how you remember for essentially autobiographical comics?
Well, like, yeah, I usually have at least one notebook. I think I have 3 on me at the moment, actually. But I just like to listen. And I really, when I hear stuff, I just write it down. Like, I'm in New York recently, and there's this guy, and he just walking down the street, and he said, I don't give a fuck if you don't own 2,000 olive trees, you don't know shit about making olive oil. And I'm like, I have to write this down, because so like I used to do that back in DC, and like just recently I was there like a month ago getting some reference photos and whatnot, and I walked with there's this lady on the phone, well, young woman on the phone, and she's like, yeah, I know the Sultan. And I'm like, so I used to hear this stuff all the time in Georgetown, because like they really just speak differently. I mean, I'm just like this lower middle class guy from Cleveland. I didn't know about any of this stuff, so there would just be these things that I would hear, and I would just write it down, or once Google Note became a thing, maybe write them and then put them there. So I have like this file full of Georgetown quips, you know. It depends whether you consider yourself a Jewish American or an American Jew. And I'm like, so I like that. Like, to me, like, I really like, I feel when you do autobio, it's like, it's life, so you got to pay attention. And not just to your own stuff, but like what's going around you, so you can get that milieu in there. Because at a point, I mean, it's not a spoiler, but at a point, this becomes more a DC tale, yes, or East Coast. But the first half was definitely like I was primarily in Georgetown, because that's where I began, and was making money. So a lot of it is it's a very Georgetown based story in the beginning. I mean, yeah, you're in a motel there, you're all over, but Georgetown really factors in hard, because those were my first clients. And yeah, I think that answered that.
Yeah. So you mentioned taking reference photos, and I noticed in one of the issues you have the old Riggs Bank, which was a landmark on Wisconsin and M Street. And your artist does a pretty good job rendering stuff, so it's instantly recognizable to those of us who live here, but not obtrusive to those of us who have never driven past the Riggs Bank. And I thought that was quite nice. And that's true of this statue here, which some people were talking about while we were setting up. The statue used to be at Haynes Point.
Right.
So why don't you talk a little bit about this, because it's so very bizarre. Let me open the full.
Yeah, I discovered that like when I first moved here, and I'm in Howard. I had this 1989 Toyota Camry. It's called Captain Diesel, very reliable car. And I would just when I first got here, again, it's like no Google Maps, barely MapQuest in '98.
Right.
Like I just drove around, like, and got lost. And one day, driving around getting lost, I came across this, and I'm like, what is going on? So, I would just, I'd roll a joint, drive around, smoke, and just end up, I'm like, what? This is a crazy thing. So that was like, I used to have like these secret spots, right, where I would go on my dates. And like, to make it look like I was really just kind of, I was impecunious and, and a little parsimonious, if you will. So I'm like, nah, if I take the ladies to these cool spots, they'll think I'm cultured. Like Smithsonian, free, great spot for a date, so, but then also you're doing cool stuff. So just to go there a lot, take a little bottle of JMO or something and hit a spliff while like sitting on his face or something, or in his palm. Yeah, I did just say that. Sorry. Excuse me, kids. Had the kids back there. But yeah, so like, and you mentioned like how my artist Juliet DeVitt, shout out Juliet, she's great, and I do send her a bunch of these reference photos, because I think it's really, I felt when reading Harvey Pekar, and then saw when people would read Chad in Amsterdam, how powerful it is when you see your city or the city where you're at in art. Like, people really dig it. Right. And it's something I'm really into. It's like just something a little special for those who know. What's the hashtag? If you know, right? And that's cool to me. Like, it's like, you don't have to, it doesn't ruin a story. But if you see it, like, oh, there's Ben's Chili Bowl. Oh, right, here's this, here's that. So I like to put in stuff like that just to, so that people see. I mean, there's some very Georgetown things in there too that the average DC denizen probably doesn't get. But I like doing that, just so for those who know, it's just to say like, oh, I know this, and if you had nothing to do with DC, you wouldn't know what this is. But it doesn't disturb the story for anyone. So I'm a big fan of that, particularly with autobio.
Right. So I think the statue is called The Awakening, and they've moved it over to the Maryland side.
National Harbor.
National Harbor.
It's a terrible spot.
It's a terrible spot.
National Harbor's in Maryland, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it went to the hotel and casino space instead of the local National Park Service with the golf course next to it. For just average people, now it's like you can go and pay $20 an hour to park next to it. More than that? Yeah, okay. Anyway, sorry, we just went DC on you there. Boy, I don't know how much I want to give away with your current issue number 6, but number 6 moves into somebody else's biography as well. Your grandmother, right?
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about your grandmother, who served in World War II.
True. My grandmother, Opal Irene Bilyeu, rest in peace. My mom's mom, and she, I guess when I was like in first grade or so, she was hit by a car, and then her health deteriorated pretty badly after that. She went blind, and she had osteoporosis and whatnot. So my mother ended up taking care of her.
And this is in Cleveland.
This is in Cleveland, that's correct. And my mom at the time kind of had a burgeoning career as a vegan baker. She was probably like the first vegan baker in Cleveland in the 90s.
Yeah.
Who was and she still does it, and it's really good stuff. She's like, not just because that's my mom, but because she knows how to cook. And but she kind of gave that up to take care of her mom. And she's like, I'm not sending my mother to a home. And I always respected that with my mom. And like one thing, my grandmother is white. She's at least believes herself to be of Irish origins. So she had kids with a black guy in the 50s when, I guess it was technically illegal to do that. So she kind of got kicked out of her family. And I don't talk about this in the story, just to give a little context, because it didn't really matter at that point. But a lot of people are like, wait, I don't get it, your grandmother's white. And you're like, yeah, but that stuff happens. This is America, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of, we're the home of miscegenation, really, or currently at least. And so my mom was taking care of her, and me and my mom are real cool, like really cool. So she would call me a lot when I was doing this. We'd still talk like once a week when I'm in Amsterdam. It's like my dog. So while I was doing like all this illicit stuff, my mother would call. And then we finally deal with it in this issue. Like, we get to see what's going on her side when she's making these calls throughout these issues. And I put it in because just to show like how something like a commitment to like doing, it's not so much about selling weed, but it's about kind of not being a real part of society and kind of going, and I believe, what is an easy but dangerous way out. And then what you sacrifice in life while you're doing it. So I wasn't really keeping in touch with my family as much as I should have during these months when I began. So there was this kind of deals with a time where my mom called and it's like I needed to pick up. So without giving her away, I like the issue a lot, and my mother really loved it. Most people who have read it, they're
It was
like,
very touching.
thank you. It's the best thing you ever wrote. Like, yeah, but you got to read these other 5 first to really to really feel it.
That is
But
true.
it is, but it's a good setup, and also like, what do they call it? Like the peripeteia? The story will kind of, it all kind of went right up till this, and then we enter that other part of the story, so things start to go awry.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about going right. One of the frequent things that are drawn are massive rolls of bills, money. So I assume this was a lucrative business. It seems like everybody involved is talking at least in hundreds and often thousands of dollars, which probably made your life a little easier, but at the same time, there's always a question. There's somebody who's always asking you to front them so they can start dealing. And then, of course, the dealers at the far end who are providing you want to make sure they get paid. So were you like making money crazy money that lets you actually fit in with Georgetown students? Or you seem to have even less time to deal with the students actually, because you seem to be running around being a small businessman most of the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I mean, at first I was like making money, but I didn't have time to spend it really, because things were hectic. But like in the very beginning, like I would say if I really wasn't trying on a slow week, you'd have like an extra 1,000 to 1,500, maybe 750 to 1,500 on a slow week. On a good week, you can make up to like 5,000 a week, which I understand is not like Tony Montana money.
No,
but for a guy, and I also had I was making about 45,000 at my job. So with this on top, I did have a good amount of money, and eventually I get into what I started to spend money on, and what I got addicted to the money, of course, which is something that just happens. Like, no matter how much you make, say I'm making on average an extra 3 G's a week or so. I quit cooking. I'm eating out all the time. I go to the comic book store, blow 200, go across the Kramer Books, blow 200 more.
Yeah, it was
the
a
old
nice
school
store.
record store that used to be there. What was the name of that record store?
Caruso's.
Caruso's. Thank you. Go there, blow 3.
Yeah, that was a nice store.
That was a good store. And then like just go to a concert, whatever I want to do. I go to New York for the weekend. Go to the airport. I want the next plane smoking. So I really got caught up into this spending money thing. And it was funny because you made enough to save some, but then you're blowing so much money, and it becomes this afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's the closest I got to the students at Georgetown. That even though I'm technically earning it, I quit thinking and worrying about it.
Yeah.
But it's like I was making the money as opposed to a lot of kids I knew at Georgetown. Just they got rich
Right.
parents, and
Yeah.
I mean, not even to knock or judge them, because I mean I think in an optimal position everyone should be able to study without having to worry about their finances. But that's how I played it. So yeah, about that. So not like for me it was life-changing money though.
Right.
It made me, I want to go to Amsterdam and Barcelona next month. I could do it, So a lot of stuff that I didn't have the money to do, I now all of a sudden did.
So 2 quick questions, and I think one is, what comic book stores did you go to in Georgetown? Because I was going to them at that time. And then we're going to cut back over to how you, we'll cut back over to ending up in Amsterdam without having you reveal what happens after issue 6, because you haven't published it yet.
True. So at the time I was going to Big Planet on Wisconsin. That was my spot. My man Kev was up there. He's the little worm guy with that snap hat. And Kai was there, so I would go there, and then I mean, for me, a lot of that experience too is just going to the store and talking shit to the employees.
Yep.
That's always, I've been doing that like my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my main store. Sometimes I would go. Wasn't there a Big Planet out at College Park too?
Eventually,
yeah. I would go on that on occasion, but that wasn't the main one. Was definitely Big Planet there, and I think the one on U popped up after I moved in 2008.
The Georgetown one closed and they moved to you.
Right. So those were mostly the spots where I would go for comics. Yeah, I wasn't more like, I collected a few things, had to finish up Starman and things like that at that time. That was a good run. And so I was more into music actually. So I guess I would be hitting up way more record stores than I was comics. But again, books, magazines, all that, just consuming media, which is weird because, like, you know, I mean, I guess stereotypically people think people who sell drugs are buying cars and jewelry.
Oh,
And I guess
yeah.
some people are, but I mean, cars and jewelry is kind of clever because, like, say you hit like a rough patch, you can sell jewelry and cars. You can't sell comics and music and concert tickets, you know. So,
Yep.
yeah. And then, what was the other question? Oh, like,
Well, I'm gonna ask you a few more questions about Amsterdam and your current life. Oddly enough, Georgetown at one point was up to 4 comic book stores, maybe. I don't think they were all open at the same time, but that's why I was wondering which one you'd been to. So at the end of Chad in Amsterdam, and is this series actually over? And then number 2, at the end, can you talk a little bit about your strip about burnout, which goes back to being drawn by the first person you worked with? It looks like he's influenced with Kyle Baker, actually.
yes, I got a story in there, and yeah, good eye, Jared Bogus again, and Jared's actually like, he's like a Christian comic guy. Like, he makes, I think he's like the editor now of Christianity Today, or the, at least the, like, art director, I believe. And I love his art. Like, he does great stuff. And he was kind of like, he I know he had a plan to, like, illustrate the Bible, and they did certain stories of books. And I'm not a Christian, but I thought his work was great. So, real happy that he would work with me, but I don't have him draw anything overly salacious or nothing like that, you know what I'm saying? So, that story you're talking about burnout, I called it Billy Ocean. And, because it's weird, like, over in Amsterdam, they have, like, one of the best work-life balances, they say, but they also have the highest rate of burnout in the world. So for me, that's like, you know, cake and eating it as well. And you're like, well, how are y'all so burnt out if you got the best work-life balance? Like, So when I learned of burnout, I was like, there's some lady at the job where I worked, and I was in a real precarious position with this job because my visa was tied to it, and they didn't like me. I was one of few guys, only black guy, only American, only person who really knew anything about art. It was probably the worst job I ever worked in my life. And so one lady, she hadn't been in weeks. I'm like, what happened to this girl Marika? Oh, she's on leave for burnout. I'm like, what is burnout? And they're like, it's when the pressures of the job get to you and you can't deal with it. I'm like the pressures of the same job that we're all working. Yeah, well, she was having problems with the management. I'm like, the same management we all got to deal with. So I was like, next day I was burnt out too. So, but the funny thing was, like, it's kind of because, like, I was burnt out. I didn't know where I was going to be in 3 months. I had a feeling like they're not going to renew my visa. I don't know what I'm going to do. And that's like a whole new problem, worrying about a visa. Like, and I realized, like, you know, folks have so much to say about immigration, but they never were immigrants. And, like, worrying about a visa is no way to live. It's kind of a nightmare, even in a very nice, very modernized country like the Netherlands. So I claimed a burnout, and they didn't really believe I had it because I wasn't, like, you know, crying and convulsing and things like that. I'm like, it's just not how I act, but I am burnt out. Trust me, like, I got the burnout. So that's actually, most of my Dutch friends love that comic a lot, because there is a certain group of people over there too who are like, yeah, burnout, it's bull. So I like that story a lot, and you kind of see. But with that said, I think we do work way too hard over here, and we don't, like, over there they get stuff like 8% bonus per year for holiday. Like, even if you're unemployed, you get 8% on top of your annual benefits, because they believe everyone should be able to go on a nice vacation. Imagine presenting that to the house here. Like, you know, so certain things. And I mean, I do think, again, it's like, it's a good thing to be able to say, dude, I'm burnt out. I need a month off. Like, there's too much going on. Imagine if we could do that. And they have this safety net there that we just didn't grow up with. So that's also kind of me learning about this net. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm ready to fall into this net and be burnt out. And I was really just kind of relaxing, but I needed to relax. So yeah.
So you mentioned not asking your friend to draw the salacious material, but you did not shy away from occasionally going to the other thing that Amsterdam is known for. It's sex tourism.
Yes.
Although this one you're just asking how money is transferred from the viewers to the women. Can you talk a little bit about aspects of exploring Amsterdam or the whole Netherlands, from the two languages to things like the strip clubs to the different foods? A little bit about how different it was for you from the guy from Cleveland.
Like that one you showed with the stripper, Juliet, who draws the re-up, drew that. And so we met, and she's normally a children's book illustrator. So I met her. She came up to me actually, and like, I mean, she's established. Like, she's done like 600 plus children's books in her career, which is crazy. And she paints, and she's a bassist for a band, and she sings in a gospel choir, and she's a mom, a wife. But she was like, yeah, but you don't have to say that. I don't care about that role. And but just, a cool lady. So like, she wanted to do something a little more edgy than the children's book. So I had this story about the strip club. And again, it's just something like, I don't really go to the strip club because I don't want to spend my money at the strip club. I don't have a problem with the strip club. It's just it's not for me. I don't live in Atlanta. So like, I was really interested, as you said, because over there, like, here you have $1, which is a bill. And over there you have a €1 coin and a €2 coin. So I'm like, but so how do they tip? Like, are they tipping fives? Because I'm like, that's a pretty hefty tip. So I went to the Amsterdam strip club. And oddly enough, there's not that many strip clubs. There's only like really one in Amsterdam. There's sex theaters. There's only one strip club. So I went there. Shout out La Vie en Prost. My man Peter was good. And so I went there and told him what I wanted to do. And he's like, yeah, you guys could come in and take your photos, and she can sketch the ladies and get the feel for it. So we both went in, and Juliet's like, at the moment, she's like 66. So I guess she was like 62, and I'm like 45, and me and her. And like, she's this short little Dutch lady. And so we be hanging out. And people are like, how do you two know each other? And we're like, we make comics in strip clubs. So that's what we did. And like, it was fun, like at first, like, 'cause you go to this new city, which I kind of knew because I visited Amsterdam during re-up years, about a little before and during the years, probably about 6 times, I think. So I already kind of knew the city, at least knew my way around. You know how you think you know a place, but you really don't, but enough to get started. So I knew enough to get started. So like, when I actually moved there in 2009, I kind of had a leg up, particularly on a lot of the students who were at the University of Amsterdam as well. Like, and they kind of just stuck with one another, which I get, because, we're the outsiders. But I kick it with them sometimes, and then sometimes I'd be like, kick it with my Dutch folks who I knew, or kick it by myself, or go to Rotterdam. So I was just like really daring, kind of like I did here in DC. Just, I want to know what's going on here. So I would just, it's nice when you move to a place that you don't have an allegiance to, because it's just complete freedom. You're like, I don't have the same prejudices you guys have about the east side of town. So I go wherever. And that's how I felt in Amsterdam. And I tried a lot of stuff, and it really made me learn the city very well. And I thought here too, maybe more so in Amsterdam though. So, and then I was doing a lot of street photography, and that definitely helped out at looking at stuff and just enjoying, myself in this new city and being able to do whatever you wanted to do, which in Amsterdam you can do, well, within reason, most things you want to do.
How do they tip the strippers with the coins?
Oh yeah.
Question from the audience.
Yeah, how do they tip the strippers with the coins? So the thing is, usually they have some sort of piggy bank on their person. So this one particular lady had cut out on her stripper heel in that part like a little slot, so you could just put the coins in her stripper heel, which I was like, that is clever. Other ladies might wear, a little change purse or something. So they're like, we're not turning down money. Like, that's not why we do this. Well, you also see there's a lot of big spenders too. It's the strip club, man. You just gotta, get the money and however you can. But lap dancers are like 20 euros. So a lot of these guys are getting lap dances. Again, not that I'm always at the strip club.
No, honestly, I didn't really expect you were. So you talked about stopping smoking marijuana in one of the books.
Yeah, it's in the back here.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, yep. And it was in one of the letter columns too, I think.
Yeah.
And so why did you stop smoking marijuana, and where are you based now? Are you still based in the Netherlands, or are you bouncing around, living in various places in America?
I'm still in the Netherlands. I wish I could bounce around. I'm just bouncing around for like 10 weeks on this trip. I was doing saw y'all at SPX, and I've been at Eddie P, Comic Con, Autoptic in Minneapolis. I've been all over the place. So I'm still in Amsterdam though. I just save up for these trips, and then I come. But this one was too long. I'm not doing 10 weeks again. It's just crazy long. Because I'm married, and my wife want me around, fortunately.
Oh, okay.
And so, still in Amsterdam, which is a great place to be based out of. And what was the other question? Pardon me?
Stopping smoking.
Oh yeah, stopping smoking. 2021. I got a call from a person I thought was a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, you're getting way too much Ventolin. I want you to come in, check your lungs. This was in the Netherlands. So I went in and I did all these lung tests. She's like, your lungs are trash, dude. Yep. And I'm like, all right. You smoke? Yes. What do you smoke? Weed. And at that point, I'm rolling spliffs. That's a thing in Europe. They lace it with tobacco because they roll them in these papers and it burns better. I mean, if you smoke a blunt, you're smoking tobacco too. But anyway, so she told me, the person was like, yeah, you should definitely quit smoking. I'm like, all right. So I went home and I smoked my last 2 grams and I didn't smoke again.
Wow.
On occasions I'll hit it because I'm not anti-weed.
Right.
I'll eat edibles, but I don't eat them that much. Like, cause the edible game is actually better over here than it is in Amsterdam. They're still on cakes and tiramisu. Like, I like over here, you can pop a gummy or tincture. There's so many options. So we're actually, but it's America, we supersize things. So we go hard when we're about it. And what we're doing with herb it's like unprecedented. Like, and Dutch folks are like, and I always tell them, I'm like, the weed's better in the States now. They're like, they don't believe it. I'm like, during the time of this story, 2003 to 2008, it was better over there. But now, that American engineering towards anything semi like addictive or evil, we're gonna win that battle. And I just quit, and it went pretty well. My wife had quit smoking cigarettes a few months prior to that, and so yeah, I didn't smoke. And like Juliet, she quit like a month before me. Not that she was like some, Snoop Dogg or nothing, but she would smoke. I smoked. I was like Nate Dogg, smoke weed every day. So like that's what I did. Like I wake up, roll one, smoke, put a coffee on. coffee's done, roll another, smoke, and then start my day. That was my thing. So yeah, so it's nice not to smoke though. Like I said, I save it for certain people. I'm like, I'll take one hit from your thing, and I leave it at that. And I don't have a desire anymore. It's really nice. I smoked for like 26 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like shotguns and gravity bongs and any sort of apparatus you can think of, like actual air compressor with a face mask, and just boom. We've done some crazy stuff. So I was kind of ahead, and now I'm not. I'm just chilling.
Okay.
You just have to watch the drinking.
All right, we're gonna wrap up here with how many more issues is re-up going to be? And I assume we're heading for your downfall since you end up having to move to Amsterdam. When do you expect it to be finished? And finally, for those who are watching on this online after the fact, where can people buy your books if they're not in DC and coming to Fantom Comics?
All right. Firstly, with the re-up, I think we'll be done in May or June with the whole thing.
Oh, okay, fast.
We're actually, number 6 is published, but we just began work on number 9. So we're a little ahead. We're trying to bust it out because it actually took us a little longer than we anticipated. So we're really like just bing, 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 focused now. I think, now here's where it gets a little tricky. Bear with me, please. I think I'm going to publish them in this format up to the halfway point, which is kind of like the, again, this peripetia part where it's like a nice cliffhanger. And then there's probably in total, about 16 chapters or issues, but I might just put out 9 like this and then save the second half of the story for a collected edition. And I think that works. Like I want everybody to get their money's worth, and those who have been down from the giddy up, like I think if they got to pay $30 or whatever for a collected edition, it's better than having to buy 7 more issues at a issue price. So I think that will work, but putting them out in periodical fashion is good, especially I don't have a really big profile, so I like to come out with stuff. So it's better for me to drop 3 issues a year than disappear for 3 years and then, hey, I got a book.
Yeah, it works for Harvey too,
yeah, right. So that's one thing with the periodical format, but it is tricky doing a series because, as we said earlier, number 1 sells really great, fewer people on 2, 3. So what you find the stalwarts along the way. So that's that. You asked earlier about Chad in Amsterdam. Will that
continue?
Will that continue? And I guess I would say I would like it to. But in doing this, I kind of use my own money to pay all the artists. So I'm gonna go holler at the Netherlands and see if I can get a grant, because they like giving out money as if I was a stripper. And I'm trying to see if I can get more money so I can pay the artists, because I did win a prize from the fancy art world in Amsterdam for that. So I definitely got 6 more chapters of that in mind. Yeah, and I think it'd be good. Again, and then sometimes I still see new stories. But yeah, this will go up to about 16 or so. So I think it's around a 400-page story. So there's still a lot of story left. And there is a downfall, but then there's a rebirth.
Well, yeah, because you're sitting here.
Yeah, true. And then I kind of tell you, why I left DC. But still love DC. Don't love the traffic. It just took me 3 hours to get from Baltimore.
We can blame that on Baltimore, though.
Okay, let's blame Baltimore. It's a bad luck town. I love it, but it's a bad luck town. But anyway, I still love it here.
So what's your website for people who want to buy?
Oh yeah, that's right. My website, I have a few, but you can just Google Chad in Amsterdam. That's usually the easiest. It's chadinamsterdam.nl for Netherlands, or bistrobooks.eu if you prefer that. I do a lot of festivals, so you can catch me there too. I understand sometimes people are like, the shipping's too much, but it's not that much. I can usually ship stuff for about $10 bucks, $12. So it's not outrageous. It's funny. It's cheaper to ship here from the Netherlands than it is to ship to the Netherlands from the States.
Yep.
I'm not sure why, but that's just how it goes. So yeah, if you're not here in DC, but I'm in a lot of stores too. So check your stores, particularly around the East Coast, the Rust Belt, the Midwest. You know, from like here through Chicago, Minneapolis, I got some books around.
Okay. Any questions from the audience?
So are you a citizen of the Netherlands now?
So are you a citizen of the Netherlands now, comes the question.
Yeah, I am.
Hey.
Yeah, so I'm a citizen. I earned that. It's funny because like I earned it, you know. But my Dutch sucks. But you have to pass like language classes. But yeah, I am. So like I'm over there too. So they can't really get rid of me. And it's kind of nice because all the stuff that's happening in the Western world. So if something happens there, I can abscond over here. If something happens over here, tell my mom and then move over here. So it's kind of nice to be in both. And like, I don't know, maybe one day I'll go to Cuba or something like that. So yeah.
So do you see the re-up as being about DC in the same way that Chad in Amsterdam is about Amsterdam?
I think so, without me trying to be authoritative about DC. You know, like, because I mean, I am a transplant. I'm originally from Cleveland. But I felt like, you know, you go to Howard, and especially at the time when I went to Howard in '98, it was completely like pre-gentrification. So
Yeah.
it was a whole, Florida and Georgia was a whole different thing. So I got to see that, and that was good. And then, I mean, I think it is. It's just, you know, it's not like so obvious that it is, but there's definitely like in issue 8, we got some nice references to some go-go music, overnight scenario. 3 in the morning, the pancake house. Come on. You know, so like, and just stuff like that. I just want to capture, and sometimes I like the minutia, not always the most obvious thing, but just the things that like you kind of get a feel for it. I like doing that in the chat in Amsterdam too, but it like you got to show the Washington Monument, you know, stuff like this. So that's fun. So I think it is. It's like kind of like a love letter, because it's not like I left here because I disliked it. It's just I wanted to do something new, kind of, you know. Same with Cleveland. I love Cleveland too in its own way, and yeah, DC's a great. But I was definitely like a Northwest guy. I lived in Landover, Maryland too, which no one should have to live in Landover. It's terrible. I used to feel so bad for those children. I'm like, what do they do? There's nothing to do out here. Anyway, and then like, you know, I was in Virginia for work, so I really kind of got to see all these parts. And then again, like, you know, I go to, we talk about Baltimore, I go to Baltimore a lot. I just drive wherever. I'm like, why don't I know anything about Southeast? And I'm like, 'cause I don't know nobody from there. So, and that comes into this too, because I did eventually meet a dude from Southeast.
It does make for a strange drug dealer in Washington.
It does. I mean, and that's just, but I'm also just, you know, as said, like, it's how I did it.
Right.
It's not this like definitive, authoritative, like I know everything. I don't. I just know what I know. And I try to put that in and show what I loved and things that would drive me crazy or whatever. There'll be some Adams Morgan in there too, because I loved Adams Morgan and stuff like, well, it kind of predates it, but like U Street, we used to go to Republic Gardens a lot, DC Live, Platinum, all this stuff when I was in the clubs. You know, totally not in the clubs anymore.
Okay, well, shall we wrap it up here?
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, everybody who watches this someday.